FBI has a art crime team, and their art crime team today has around 22 to 24 agents on that team. They work all over the country. And what you're looking at there is the actual logo. If you go on www.fbi.gov/artcrime, you'll see this logo come up. And these individuals, these agents are trained to do investigations in art crime. When something goes missing, they're the ones who are going to get the call. They'll coordinate other offices and they will work together to recover your art. That particular logo was created in 2005. I was the founder of the National Art Crime Team for the FBI. And that logo, what that depicts is the top 10 missing artworks in 2005 from around the world. It was sort of a play off of the Top 10 Fugitive program, but we wanted to have a good rollout, so we created this logo. ACT, of course, stands for Art Crime Team. And if you look closely, I'm really happy to tell you that the main piece behind the C is a Da Vinci, Madonna and Child, that was recovered. It's been recovered since 2005 when it was stolen. The piece on the lower left, of course, is Edvard Munch's Scream. That was stolen at the time as well from a museum in Norway, and that has been since recovered as well. The piece behind the T is the green painting, the genre painting. It was a Van Gogh that was taken from the Van Gogh Museum in Amsterdam. That too has been recovered since the creation of the art crime team. In fact, that was just recovered about 2 years ago. It was found in the basement of a mafia man's mother's house in Sicily. So it had been bought for about $300,000. He transported it to Sicily, hid it in the basement of his mother's house, and that's where it stayed until it was recovered about 2 years ago. It's missing for about 16, 17 years. So a number of these pieces, at least 4 of these pieces on that art crime team logo have been recovered, I'm happy to say. Now, in none of those cases was the FBI involved. We weren't involved in any of those cases, but because we had it on our logo, we did get some credit out of that, right? Because we promoted it. But those pieces are back, about 40% of them, and that worked out well. So those are the individuals who are going to protect you when something bad happens. Let's go to the next slide. But there are limitations. The limitations of law enforcement is this. Unless the problem is a criminal problem, law enforcement's not going to be able to help you. And I can tell you throughout my career, 20 years at the FBI doing these investigations, law enforcement got involved whenever there was a theft or there was a violation of a statute. But probably 75 to 85% of art disputes are not criminal. They are disputes about authenticity. They're disputes about ownership. It's fights between inheritors. These are the types of things that law enforcement cannot get involved in, and they can't help you. Next slide. So as a result, when I retired in 2000, I started my own company, Robert Whitman Incorporated. Next slide. And we do many different types of investigations. We do art recovery services, collection management, which is really important, due diligence and provenance reviews. We do a lot of expert witness testimony and fraud cases, security, museum security, individual home security, depending on the situation. And probably the most important one in that whole grouping is collection management. And that's what I talk to people who are interested in this type of subject. If you have a collection, you have to have good collection management. You have to know what you have. For example, we got a call from a woman who had a fabulous grouping of trunks, 1930s steamer trunks in the basement of her old farmhouse. We cut the locks off, we opened up the trunks, and in there we found hundreds and hundreds of first edition books. Edgar Allan Poe, Moby Dick, pieces that you wouldn't believe, original manuscripts written by Theodore Roosevelt for some of the books that he had written. Amazing material, more than $2.5 million worth of first edition books. She had no idea she had them. And they were sitting in an old farmhouse basement with a dirt floor and basically were rotting away in these steamer trunks. So we took them out, we cataloged them, gave her ideas on value. We took them, we put them in the proper storage types of bins, and then we put them away for us so they would be protected for 50 years more. That's collection management. That's knowing what you have. And that's a very important thing, especially when you have inheritance or estate situations. That's something we need to have. Next slide. So as I said, speaking to you, the interesting thing about art theft, it isn't just paintings, prints, and sculptures. Here's the situation. Document that. It's part of that. It's cultural property. It's so important. Throughout my career, we've been able to recover an original Shakespeare's first folio that was stolen from a university in Manchester, England, and was offered for sale at the Folger Shakespeare Library in Washington, D.C. This particular photograph here is a picture of a document that we recovered just a couple of years ago after I left the FBI at my company. We did a case for the U.S. Holocaust Museum, and we were able to recover the wartime diary of Alfred Rosenberg. Rosenberg was Adolf Hitler's chief philosopher. In fact, in many respects, Rosenberg is the guy who turned Hitler into Hitler. He met young Adolf in 1919. He started to bring him under his wing. Rosenberg was the editor of the Nazi Party newspaper, the publisher of the newspaper, and he was the one who had all the ideas. So all the terrible ideas that we put with Nazi Germany, with Adolf Hitler, many of them came from Rosenberg, Alfred Rosenberg. So this particular diary he had written over the course of 10 years, from 1935 to 1945, was found in a castle in Germany at the end of the Second World War by General Patton's troops. They went to the castle, recovered the diary. It was sent to Nuremberg for the Nuremberg trials, where one of the U.S. prosecutors was using it to prosecute Rosenberg and others. This diary was written, it's 400 pages, it's handwritten, and it's not like the other two diaries written by Nazis at the time. This one was written specifically as a memoir for Rosenberg for himself. It's not a rosy picture of the Third Reich. It is what he was thinking as the war was going on, and when he had his meetings with Hitler, his lunches, his teas, and what was being discussed. So that's why the Holocaust Museum was very interested in it. Well, when it was sent to Nuremberg, it was used. By 1946, though, it disappeared. Rosenberg was hung. He was one of the first 10 war criminals to be hung after the tribunal. But by 1948, this particular document was missing. So it was gone from 1948 to 2013 when we recovered it for the U.S. Holocaust Museum. And next slide. So to give you an idea how important that is, we wrote a book about that called The Rosenberg Diary, The Devil's Diary, Alfred Rosenberg and the Stolen Secrets of the Third Reich. And in that book, we talk about what the actual diary says and how that corresponds with what was going on at the time in Nazi Germany. Next slide. Of course, you can see here, Alfred Rosenberg is on the left in the front. He's with Hitler. This is in 1923. They first met in 1919. So he was with Hitler from the beginning all the way through 1946 after Hitler was dead. And then Rosenberg left as well. Next slide. So that's document theft. That's why documents are just as important when we talk about these cases. Another document that I recovered during my career was an original copy of the Bill of Rights. It was actually the North Carolina copy, the copy that was sent by George Washington to be ratified by the state of North Carolina. That particular piece was stolen in 1865 by a Union trooper coming up from Sherman's troops coming back from Atlanta. They ransacked Raleigh, they went into the State House, and the trooper took that document. So you can see how important these documents are, whether it's a Shakespeare portfolio, or it's the Bill of Rights, or in this case, the Rosenberg Diary. All of them are extremely important. The reason the diary was so important was because it was a first-hand account of what was going on during the war that we didn't know about. You know, we know what's in Shakespeare's portfolios, and we also know, of course, what's in the Bill of Rights. But when it came to that 400-page diary, there was new information, even surfacing in 2013, that we had never known about. So that's why it was so important to recover that. Now I show you this particular slide because when we think of art theft, this is what we think of. We think of our Oscar-winning art thieves. And if you look at the photographs, probably everybody out there is looking at these, they know who these individuals are. And they're all from famous art theft movies. The two on the left, lower left, of course, have a Sean Connery, and he was involved in a movie called Entrapment. You might remember that movie. The one in the middle, of course, is Pierce Brosnan. The famous art theft movie he was involved in was called Thomas Crown Affair. And of course, many of us do remember Steve McQueen in the original Thomas Crown Affair, but Pierce Brosnan did a great job with the new version. And on the right-hand side is Cary Grant in a great movie called To Catch a Thief from 1955, where he played a jewel thief. All of these people are Oscar-winning art thieves, or what we think of as Hollywood movie stars that are intelligent, beautiful, rich, debonair. These are our real art thieves that we think about, correct? Go on the next slide. Well, it's a little different. These are the real thieves. These are not Oscar winners. They're not Hollywood people. These are real people who are involved in art thefts. All were federally prosecuted, went to prison, represent about $6 million for the stolen art and cultural property. We're going to talk about a few of these individuals today. A few of these individuals today in cases that they were involved in. Next slide. What kinds of theft are there for the museums? Well, there's insider theft. About 90% of internal or of thefts from museums in the United States are internal. So the first thing we're going to look at when we do an investigation of art theft in the United States is going to be, who had access to that collection. Then there's armed robberies, then there's burglaries. Excuse me. Next slide. First one we're going to talk about is going to be a burglary. And I'm going to go through each of these types of crime and give you a quick thumbnail of what happened and how we resolved it, how we solved these crimes. And I'm a little different from like the professors and whatnot that you're usually going to see on this cast, because I don't talk about anything that I am not involved in. So these are cases that I did, that I actually worked on, that I was responsible for. So as a result, you're going to get a first-hand knowledge of background that you won't see in the newspapers or anything like that on how these things happen and what did happen. The first case was a burglary called the Pennsbury Manor. The Pennsbury Manor, it was the country home of William Penn. Of course, he was the founder of Pennsylvania, and that's where William Penn and his family lived from 1683 till 1700. 17 years they were there. And what happened was, it was a Friday night, and these individuals, 3 individuals, went there. They had been going around doing. So what happened was, these individuals had decided, these 3 young men, that they wanted to be pickers. That show Pickers with on History Channel, and this is what they wanted to do. They wanted to go around. They wanted to pick trash and try to sell it at local auction houses on Tuesday during their antique auctions. So they were going around on a Friday night. They had a couple of beers, of course, and they decided, well, we don't have anything good for the Tuesday auction, so we need to do something about that. So what they decided to do was to go to the place that they had gone to when they were in the 5th grade, the historical home that they visited. And so they went to this historical home and they broke in. What they did was they ran throughout the museum, and they were able to steal about 40 items, about 40 pieces total. They were in there for about 15 minutes. The alarms did go off in the Pennsbury Manor, but what happened was the state police didn't respond. It took them about 25 minutes to get there. So as a result, they were in and out, had stolen the pieces, and they got away with it. Now, go to the next slide. Now, many of you might think, that this was how it was done, because, when you talk about stealing art from a museum, it's kind of like Mission Impossible, right? They're going to come down from the ceiling, and it'd be very, very sleuthing and very quiet. If one drop of sweat falls to the ground, all the alarms would go off. Of course, that's not what happened. What happened was they broke in and they went right through the museum. Go to the next slide. We know what happened because you see the white door there. That's the museum. Right next to the handle on that white door was a big muddy footprint. And in the FBI world, in our circles, we would call that a clue, because that would tell us something. And of course, it is a clue. And why is that? It's because we knew at that point that it wasn't an inside job. If it was some type of inside theft, insider type of thing, they wouldn't have had to break the door in or kick the door in to be able to get into the place. So as a result, we knew that it was not an inside job. But nonetheless, we still had to interview all 150 people who worked at the museum, docents, curators, anyone who was there, we had to talk to. We did that. Nothing came of it. We never really thought there would be, but nothing came of it. So we did the next best thing. We took the case and we put it aside. We waited for a break. About a month later, we got a call, and it was an individual who was driving down the highway, I-95, outside of this museum area. And it was a Friday night again. And he had been drinking. He had been weaving as he went down the highway. So a very observant young state trooper pulled him over. And as he walked up to the car, he got a flash on his radio. And the flash said, "Be on the lookout. There was a burglary of a pizza parlor in the town right next to where they were. And at the burglary, somebody stole the safe, the small safe out of the pizza parlor." So, of course, this individual trooper was listening to this, and he wasn't paying much attention because he had a car stop. He had to go take care of it. So as he walked up to the car, of course, he saw the young man in the seat, and he said, "License and registration, sir." He pulled him out, gave him the license and registration. The trooper had a flashlight and was looking at the license and registration, looked at the person, realized that it was correct, it was him. But the next thing he did, of course, was do what we call a wing spread search. He didn't go into the car, he just looked in the back. And with the flashlight, he saw behind the front driver's seat, in the back seat on the floor, he saw a safe. Now, in the Pennsylvania State Police, that's a clue. Okay. And so, as a result, of course, it was the safe from the burglary in the pizza parlor. So he arrested the young man at that point and put him into the Bucks County prison. The next morning, of course, we got a call because that young man decided he needed help. He wanted to talk about the burglary at the Pennsbury Manor. The Pennsbury Manor burglary was a big case involving a full-page newspaper spread the day after it happened, so it was very notorious. So as a result, we went to interview him, and we found out that, yeah, he was involved. He and his two friends had done it, and they had stolen all the material and taken it out, and they had taken it all over in green trash bags and put it into the garage of his girlfriend. They hid it in the back of the garage. So, of course, the next question is, who was the girlfriend? So we sent teams out to interrogate and arrest the other two individuals, and then we went to the girlfriend's house that night, state trooper and myself. We knocked on the door about 9 o'clock at night, and of course, the mom and dad answered the door with the young lady. And, at 9 o'clock at night on a Saturday night, when the state police and the FBI show up at your front door, it's not a good thing. So she was more than happy to talk to us about whatever had happened. So we said to her, "Well, what happened? Where's the material? Where are the green bags?" And she said, "Well, they were in the back of the garage." And it was a detached garage, like a barn. So we said, "Okay, well, let's go get them." And she said, "Well, didn't he tell you?" And he said, we can't get them. And of course, I looked at the trooper and he looked at me and I said, "Well, why not?" And she said, "Well, we took them all the green bags, and we threw them into the Delaware River to get rid of them." The Delaware River, ladies and gentlemen, is a tidal river, a very large river, and as a result, of course, they were gone. All the 30, 40 objects that were taken from the Pennsbury Manor that belonged to the William Penn family. Well, the next morning, next slide. Next morning, we put the Philadelphia Police dive team into the river, and the state trooper and myself were there when we started pulling the material out. Thank goodness. If you look closely, all the material you see there, the wet material, was all pewter. It was all the steel pieces that were taken from the Pennsbury Manor.